So, I guess I'm really inspired with like everything around me. When I paint, sometimes I'll use like flowers when they're alive and like paint them kind of throughout their life until they die, and then kind of watch them decompose. Like that process to me has always been really beautiful. And some of my works are based on that. Sometimes when I paint, I'll listen to the same song or playlist over and over again to keep my head in like a similar state of mind. With these paintings here, what was initially my inspiration was the dried paint on my palette after I would paint my larger works. So I would scrape off my palette, and I always use a lot of paint, so there's always a lot left on my palette. So I'd scrape it off, and I ended up developing these blocks that are kind of a combination between paint scraps and the paint themselves. I was always a really creative child, but I had kind of focused on more of my sciences and academia when I was applying to college. And I ended up going to Colby College, which is in Maine, and I graduated with a BA in art. But when I originally went there, I was planning on being a psych major. And then I took a foundations class my freshman year of college, and I really fell in love with it, and I was like, I think I can do this. I was like, I think I can make this my major and like really go forward with it. And my teacher was super supportive, and she was like, I think you can do it also, and that's kind of what started the whole the whole endeavor. These smaller canvases I kind of view as my mental space. So when I make these tiny ones, I'm like sitting at like a small table. I have all my scraps around me and my palette, and I kind of am just going after it as in like a mental way. Whereas my larger works, I feel like they're more expressive, and they are more of like body pieces to me. I feel like these are more of my thought process, whereas my bigger pieces are more emotional in terms of brushstroke and what I'm thinking about when I paint those. For some of my larger works too, I get my head in like a certain state of mind, and again kind of try and stay there, whether it's painful or happy, and that's where kind of like music comes in to kind of keep me in that state. I've done a few where I've painted the larger work and then taken the scraps on my palette and then kind of created an afterthought, which is kind of like me reflecting on my larger work. And it's like me kind of reevaluating it for myself and like feeling more intimate to it and closer to it, closer connected to it. So a huge part of my philosophy in my art is I like to think of my art as another form of communication. And I want people to kind of look at my work and hopefully become entranced in it and kind of feel something in it that they didn't necessarily feel beforehand. Just kind of something else, that unexplainable kind of feeling. And I've always found it really interesting, like communication beyond languages, because that really is with your eyes. And when you look at something, it's like if someone smiles at you, and you might not speak the same language, but a smile can break down those barriers, and I feel like art kind of has that same effect.